wanted to start by asking you, I mean, your ability to communicate and construct through your experience is truly remarkable. And I wanted to ask you, I mean, what sort of emotions have you felt in recent times using the Gazelle Twin channel to, overcome your fears through?
It's quite a big question. Thank you, by the way, as well. I think it's been an interesting journey. Without sounding too cliched, I think the process of recording the album was one experience and was obviously very personal and very private and slightly harrowing, and also incredibly cathartic. Just the process of recording itself was like a kind of therapy session. I get very into it, and it was really like I didn't really know what I was doing with it at the time. I was just kind of in a headspace and just going for it, really. And then once I'd finished everything and sort of looked back on it, had a bit of perspective, I realised sort of the things that I was talking about and singing about and writing about, stuff that I just hadn't really planned, and obviously things that have bubbled up from my teenhood and childhood and stuff. So that was really rewarding for me, and I kind of felt so pleased and content by having done that I wasn't really even that fussed about performing it, or even whether the release would happen as I previously wanted it to. But then I ended up having the opportunity to do quite a few shows, and that's been a completely different experience emotionally. It's kind of almost like returning back to the studio, and each time I perform stuff, except there's a lot more clarity, and I feel a lot more kind of comfortable with the setup and my performance and lyrically and everything. So it was kind of emotional during the process of writing it, but I think now the performance, I just get quite a lot out of it. It's quite aggressive, and I'm able to really live out this identity, multiple identities and multiple experiences in a live setting. And in most cases, I've done quite a lot of shows, I can't even remember how many now. In the last year, I've been touring for over a year. It's just been really empowering.
I understand you used to sort of spend a lot of time growing up and living in an imaginary world. I mean, for you, how beneficial was that for you? You've touched upon doing that during your adult years was very beneficial. I mean, how does that seep into what you do and like your overall perspective? How does that help?
I think a lot of the time it's sort of to do with kind of hiding, and I think I've done that for most of my life, really, in certain situations and public situations, social situations like school and nursery. I have memories back to nursery where I've had a very specific thought or a very specific feeling or experience that's just made me want to shut off and just rely on myself, really. I've had a very decent childhood, loving family, etc. But it's just that was my nature. So I was just kind of drawn to spending time, being creative and being creative out of not much, which I think is actually really good for children. And it's a good environment to be in, I think, even as an adult and a creative person. I think when you have a limit to your tools, you have to think a lot harder. You have to really bend things out of shape. So I think I've done that. I do that, methodically with how I work, but I also do it just to survive life sometimes. I just kind of have to, even to the point of saying, supermarkets interest me. It's kind of, it's not a pleasant experience going in these places, and it's either unpleasant because it's busy or crowded, or it's kind of just it just feels kind of grotesque. But it's kind of thinking about it in a certain context and being aware of all of these very different elements, the temperatures and the smells and the lighting. They kind of keep me thinking about other stuff and not actually letting it get too much.
Let's talk about the absolutely fantastic album Unflesh, and part of the theme centers on puberty and coming of age, and you got to really sort of shed your skin and throw out everything that spited you with this record. Do you feel in a sense you got to avenge your upbringing?
I feel like, I do feel like that to some extent. It's like all the rules that you've had to live by suddenly go right out the window. And it's like, it's one of very few ways in when you're an adult that you can actually do that legitimately. I mean, you can make movies or something, but you can do artwork, you can write poetry and stuff. But to do this is like, it's really, I can actually live out some of these, you know, it's almost like reliving memories, but the way I wanted them to go, you know, like everybody does when they've had like a weird thing happen in the day, earlier in the day, like they've had a confrontation with someone, and you kind of relive it all day. It kind of plays over and over, and you sort of start bending it to how you kind of wish it had played out sometimes if it went wrong, or you know. And I kind of see it like a sort of grand version of that. It's like, I'm just going to go back and this is how I wanted this to happen. This is how this should have happened, and that kind of thing. That kind of very basic concept of revenge.
A song that's been lauded and commended, and rightfully so, Belly of the Beast. I mean, as you were forming and arranging this track, I mean, what sort of informed the direction? You know, how would you describe that process? How did you bring it all together? The vocal style, the arrangements, you know, the pace.
Well, it actually did all come from back to supermarkets. It came from a sample I had, because I was spending quite a lot of time in Sainsbury's, and like too much time, and it was when they just brought in all the automated checkout things, like not even that long ago really. It's like, what, like 3 years ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And it was just that really particular kind of jarring bleep that I just wanted to just capture, and I didn't really know what I was going to use it for. And when I played it back at home, I heard this, it's actually like a fifth, like an interval, boop, boop. And it just caught my attention, so I just started to loop it. And then after a while, it just kind of, I just thought, actually, this could form quite a, it just kind of grew out of that, and I kind of came up with this really dirty beat, and I wanted it to feel slightly tribal. I wanted it to feel like something was bubbling out of this, you know, out of this kind of dark place, out of, you know, I kind of visualised like meat sort of breaking free out of its packaging, you know, like things exploding, and almost like products sort of taking their revenge on the consumer, like a really kind of slightly tacky idea. Horror movies type of stuff, really. And
that's what the video entails. So
and that's what that was, and it was kind of a whole mixture of. I had a kind of vision of that sort of thing happening, and then tried to recreate something similar, and then it kind of took on a whole different life. The video did in the end, but it still kind of has that very feral kind of vibe that I wanted.
What commonly decides your style and techniques vocally?
It really depends on the emotions, I think. I think, you know, there's like previous things that I've recorded have been very almost quite distant, quite choral. They're in a sort of bigger space, maybe like multiple voices and stuff like that, kind of denoting landscapes and something kind of pretty in a way. And with this, because it was all about, it was kind of, let's say, like, you know, the location of everything in this record was in the body, literally in the veins and the bones and your guts. And I just felt like to have any kind of reverby kind of stuff going on, it just wouldn't feel right. That's kind of a dreamy world, whereas this is like daylight. This is kind of really harsh, you know, enclosed space sort of thing. So that was really like the main direction was what I was trying to achieve with this kind of a bodily record. So I didn't want to cloud it with too many effects, but I do use, you know, a fair amount of effects. There's a lot of double track vocal, there's a lot of chorus and delay at times, but then that's just to give it the kind of magnitude that it needs sometimes, and it's also to be able to channel other voices. And there's lots of different voices on the record, and they all represent a different sort of personality, really.
Do you feel liberated when you're performing live?
Yeah, I do. For this album, I really do. And the set, it's kind of been a similar, you know, shape for best part of, well, a year and a half almost. And it just feels like it really works, and it's not the same sort of order as the album. It's obviously got to be quite different, and there's a few songs we don't always perform because they're sometimes just not quite right, they're too quiet. But by the end of the set, usually I'm feeling pretty, like, pumped.
So, you have this dislike for the gym. How does your dislike for the gym come into play? Why do you have a dislike for the gym?
Especially gyms in supermarkets, next door to supermarkets. Oh, geez, you know, I've I've never really spent much time with them, to be honest. But it just goes back to school, you know. It's like that whole horrible sort of lack of privacy, being told to, you know, get undressed in front of teachers and other kids, and, you know, just, you know, having the most excruciating body image, like, disaster. And I just kind of associate most changing rooms with that sort of feeling of like, no, fuck no, I just need to get out of here. And gyms are the same. I mean, it's just all about kind of being on show, and I mean, it shouldn't be, because it isn't. It's about, you know, being healthy and looking after your body and your heart and stuff. But for me, it's just, you know, more often than not, it's
narcissism
it's like
involved.
a narcissistic nightmare. Yeah. I mean, I don't think I've been to a single gym that I've felt comfortable in. That's why I don't go to them.
Growing up, I understand your father was a hunter, and your sister wanted to save the animals. So half your house was probably a pet cemetery, and the other half was collecting the animals themselves. Yeah. I mean, does that in any way seep into your music? I know a lot of your past experiences do. That must have been something.
Probably. I mean, definitely. I mean, my dad wasn't like a full-time hunter. We just had a bit of land that he would maintain, and, you know, rabbits, I guess, are kind of a pain in the arse when you're trying to grow crops to sell. So I came I came up very close to dead animals and, you know, the gore of it all, and the reality of it all. And I come from a meat-eating family, so very often the meat or the rabbits or the birds that were shot were food. They're our dinner. So I was introduced to that at a very young age, and these things would be hanging in the hallway, you know, these dead rabbits and dead pheasants or whatever. And it would just be kind of, you know, you're quite accepting when you're a kid. You don't really, unless you see a reaction from somebody else, you don't necessarily always have the sort of instinct that maybe a lot of adults do, which is like, oh, that's disgusting, I'm not going to touch that, oh, that's horrible. But I was actually quite hands-on, and I was kind of involved with, you know, like preparing, usually not the rabbits, but the birds, like not like, you know, plucking feathers out and seeing them be, what do you call it, like, you know, butchered, basically. So, you know, that's quite a tactile thing. It's, you know, there's so many different senses that I have memories of that, and they're not bad, you know, and I still eat meat now. So I think that was probably a good education for me. But my sister, on the other hand, she was a little bit more concerned with keeping them alive rather than like eating them.
What are the key fundamentals that you hope to stay true to and maintain as you head forward?
I think I'm very, very strict about what I let in to my musical world and my visual world. I like to sort of soak things up and not be too prejudiced about things, having too many preconceptions, so that when I go to actually create stuff, I'm trying to constantly strip back to get to the very core of things. It's a very long-winded way of saying that. I'm just trying to sort of not be honest, but just be as unconscious as possible in the creative process, because I think that's where all the best stuff comes from. Is when you're not trying really to do anything in particular.